Have you ever tried to talk somebody into doing something different only to have them reject your idea, even though you know it would be faster and easier? Are you struggling with people who don't seem to follow through, even though they agreed that the change was needed? One reason for these and ultimately organizational change failure is the lack of involvement of the people who must do the heavy lifting. Active involvement is an essential element for any organizational change effort. And it's one of the rules we teach in our 10 simple rules for getting your employees ready for change. Yet many leaders ignore the element or believe they don't have time, their organization is too large. In this video, I want to share with you what is active involvement, what are the risks of exclusion and the benefits of actively involving your employees, and how you can increase the level of involvement to get more sustainable and healthy change accomplished in your organization. The company was implementing a new customer service model. The leaders had spent months. They announced the change, formed a project team, and began to implement the new model, only to see it fail. And they had to revert to the old model. The reason for the failure was not the model, and nor was it resistance to change. Most people liked it, and they believed it was needed. The problem was the lack of involvement of the core group of people needed for its success. The customer service clerks. Now, the customer service clerks knew the change was coming. They even supported it. They got training on the new model, on the new technology that was related to it, and all of the tools. The problem was that they were not actively involved in the design, the planning, and most importantly, the decisions about how it would work in the current operational environment. And there was no channel for them to raise concerns, offer suggestions, or influence the processes. And those who tried were labeled as resistant to change. As a result, key aspects of what was needed to integrate into that operational environment were missed, which led to a customer experience that was worse instead of better. The importance of active involvement can't be overstated. But to gain the benefits, you need to consciously create the structures and processes and ability for people to become actively involved at every level of your organization. And it's easy when you're in a hurry or the change is large or there's a tight deadline to get lulled into the belief that you don't have time, that the change is too small, that it's really not needed. But that is a mistake. You need people actively involved to carry that change. If you expect people to learn something new or take on new activities, build new relationships, unlearn the way they're currently working to take on and learn it in a new way, then they must be involved. By default, they already are involved. And to think otherwise is like thinking you will get fit if I exercise. Stephen Covey really said it best. He said, no involvement, no commitment. But what does it mean to have active involvement? When I first introduced the idea of active involvement to leaders, they get a little nervous. They picture large committees that are unable to make decisions. They picture consensus building. They feel challenged by their decisions. They think that it will create barriers and more time needed to create the change. But that's not true. Because active involvement can look different depending on the size of your organization, the context of your change effort, the size and complexity of the change, it's easier when we're thinking about defining what is active involvement to start with what it is not. Active involvement is not every person making every decision. That would be foolhardy. It's also not management by consensus. It's also not sending out a document, presentation, or other material and just asking for feedback. Active involvement is a process in which you create the opportunities, the structure, and the timing for people to work with you to accomplish your intended outcome. And you already have a model of active involvement within your operational environment. Most organizations have roles, responsibilities. People know what is expected of them and how they can contribute to creating and maintaining the operation of your environment. You need the same thing when it comes to change. When people are actively involved, they participate in the decision-making appropriate to their level, and they assist in creating and maintaining the desired state. And as a result, you get ownership. That's why active involvement is an essential element for healthy and sustainable change. Active involvement is not change by committee, it's change through commitment. And when we don't actively involve, when we exclude people, we raise the risk of failure. We've known through decades of research that exclusion triggers the same neural receptors in our brain as physical pain. Therefore, we experience and react to being excluded as if we were in physical pain. In addition, the feeling reduces our willingness to engage in a situation. The social pain that people feel when they feel their sense of inclusion has been threatened will push them to avoid the situation. All things you don't want if you're trying to enable change in your organization. If exclusion raises your risk of failure, inclusion increases your potential for success. One study exploring the effects of exclusion and inclusion found that people who felt included were more cooperative, more willing to help, and people that experienced exclusion noticed a cognitive decline when they were excluded. My own experience and the experience of our clients confirm the value and importance of active involvement. One surprise for many of our clients is that active involvement of middle management and their frontline employees saves them time, is a better use of the resources, and results in higher levels of adoption faster. And the bonus is that people are more willing to engage in another change. And as we know, whatever level of change is going on in your organization today, it's not going to be the last. So when we can build the capacity and the capability for people to embrace change, that's another win for active involvement. When we feel change is being done to us instead of with us, it's normal for us to respond defensively. It's that defensive response that often gets labeled as resistance to change and begins that toxic cycle, making it harder and harder to achieve the desired results and use change for growth in your organization. Active involvement doesn't happen by accident. It takes thought and it takes structures and processes to allow it to happen. You need to have the conversations and the planning to identify who are the people at each level of the organization that need to be actively involved and in what level. In a future video, I'm going to talk about the 3 types of decisions needed to enable organizational change and how they influence involvement and your success. The first step is to identify who are the people that you're expecting to do that heavy lifting. They need to be actively involved. The next thing is to create the kind of structures needed to enable that active involvement at the appropriate level, at the appropriate time, and make that visible so that people can be involved, so they can feel involved even if they're not sitting at every single meeting or committee or event that is going on. And that takes time and energy to create those structures. One of the things that we teach our clients is how to create a transition framework that draws from the operational framework to allow for the autonomy, the decision-making to be at those appropriate levels and open up the lines of conversation and communication to allow people to feel included in the change process. The third is to know the level of readiness of the people affected. Here's where a readiness mindset really helps, because if you're working with a resistant mindset, there's a tendency to exclude the people that you have labeled as resistant to change, to try and not include them. But when you work with a readiness mindset, you look to include people with various levels of readiness, from low levels of readiness to high levels of readiness. And through their active involvement, the people with low levels of readiness raise their readiness level, and the people that already have high levels of readiness support and engage others in the organization. Active involvement makes a difference. It creates ownership, builds the commitment needed to enable that sustainable change. Let me know in the comment section what you do. What strategies do you use to actively involve people? Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video helpful. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.